Hello and welcome to Superintendent's Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel. It's our first roundtable of the new year, but our second roundtable of the school year. And once again, we're pleased to have with us in the studio the superintendents from the four largest school districts in greater Thurston County. They have very busy schedules and we greatly appreciate them being with us. So by way of introduction, we have Mike Kirby from Tumwater Schools, Raj Manhas from North Thurston Public Schools, Dick Cvitanich from the Olympia Schools, and Andy Wolf from the Yelm Community Schools. I got it right that time. So gentlemen, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a lot going on. The legislature's now in session, so it'll be interesting to see what happens when they're done with their work. But there have been a couple of interesting news tidbits that have come out recently, and one of them is about the McCleary decision, in that the Supreme Court has kind of given the legislature a little nudge and said, you guys got to move a little faster. So I'd like to kind of have your thoughts about that. Why don't we start with you, Mike?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the down payment on McCleary wasn't actually made at the level that it needed to be made last year. Everybody was saying a minimum of $1.4 billion. In reality, they were close to $1 billion, but they made some cuts to get to that, like teacher salaries. So they probably made about an $800 million down payment. But even within that, there's learning assistance funds, which really aren't part of McCleary, so you could actually reduce that. So somewhere probably between $600 and $700 million where it was actually made as a down payment. So the next biennium is going to be huge if there is no additional money put into it right now.
And I need to just clarify for our viewers' sake, the McCleary decision was the Supreme Court decision that found that the legislature has not been doing its primary function of fully funding basic education, and they've said they need to move forward, and they're keeping an eye on them. So,
I appreciate
they made a stab at it, but didn't get very far.
Right, and I really appreciate the governor's budget, which adds some funding for teacher salaries and some more for MSOC. That would be a good thing.
MSOC?
Maintenance and
Operational.
supplies and operational. Yeah.
Yeah, when we get acronym crazy around here, sometimes people don't know what we're
They used to
talking
call
about.
it NERCs.
Oh, okay, well, we'll stick with MSOC for now.
Yes.
So, gentlemen, just join in on the conversation where this is concerned. Where do you think it's headed?
Well, I think, as Mike said, we as a state really need to start paying attention to where we are as a state in the nation. We are always asking, ourselves, how can we hold ourselves accountable and in our performance and helping our students? So recently, I was looking at a news report, which is every year the state, nationally, Education Week does a comparison of states. Not only the academic performance, but also on the finance side. So here is a basic fact, which was written up in a Seattle paper recently. We still continue to be number 41 in the nation.
Out of 50.
Per pupil funding, we are 41. And when it came to academic performance, and I have been monitoring it for some time, so this year they have different ways they look at this national test and reading and writing and different grades. So from that they rank all states where we are, and we were ranked number 9. So the fundamental question which this reporter asked in Seattle Times, which I feel I've been asking, we have been asking, the question is, well, if you can deliver this kind of performance with low funding, what is wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
We should be. So the question that reporter asked and I ask and we ask, why can't we be number 1 if we were funded? Fully middle of this nation, somewhere, not 41, maybe 20, 25th. So that's the fundamental question. And then I think McCleary case, Supreme Court has really directed the legislature to do what you said you were going to do. And all of these studies for the last few years which people have done, and they were supported by the legislature. So I think it's time for us as communities and the state to really do the right thing for our kids.
Any?
The only other pieces I would add, one, I appreciate, and I think all of us should appreciate the 3 branches of the government. It's the way our democracy is designed, and our courts made a very definite statement, and I think some of the legislators sort of feel put upon by the court's decision, the most recent one, but I think for all of us as citizens, that part of the democratic process is a healthy process, and our courts have weighed in, and they said something needs to happen here, and I'm very appreciative of that process. The part as a leader of a school district that has about a $100 million budget to facilitate each year is that I would appreciate knowing what my resources are before June to plan for September. And to me, that's a fundamental piece of this is, can we create a timeline and an expectation around what the dollars can be? We know how to help kids be successful, but we don't know is what our budget is going to be and how can we plan for that success. So I'm appreciative of the courts weighing in again. I'm appreciative of the notion of let's have a staggered way to do this so school districts can plan for students.
Did that, and Andy, I'll get to you in a sec, but did that finding by the courts really clearly define basic education? I know that has always been kind of the question, what is basic education, and what is it that the legislature is required to fund?
I think more recently that's happened as they continue to go through the process and the courts get there. Obviously the MSOC or the materials and things like that, salaries, initially the legislature hadn't accounted for that. Now that's come back to light to say that is a component of basic education. So I think as we go through this process, and I think as they continue to work, down that road to fully funding education, I think that these things will come to light more. For me, I think when I talk to constituents in Yelm and the people around us, and even teachers, the one thing that I see in this whole process is that the legislature over the last few years has given many measurable objectives for education. Student data needs to go, these need to go. And I guess my wish for them is to apply that back then into how they are funding schools. What are the measurable objectives that you're making as you go forward in this piece, and apply that back to them, because we're being held accountable. I'm going to be probably the more outspoken of the three here today, but I honestly believe that when they stand up and they take that oath, that they need to uphold the Constitution, and that's what they say they're going to do, and this is part of our constitutional piece. And so I'm glad they're making progress. I think they've made some strides, but I do think that it's a job that's not yet finished, and there's work to be done. And I don't know how much will be done in this session, but there's been some great groundwork laid. And I really appreciate, the conversation is so rich and full now, and we've kind of got away from these other things, but it's really pointed about students and what we can do and how we can do that. So that's been the benefit of this whole piece.
Right, and this is the short session this year, so it's like 60 days. They're here for 60 days. But we all know that it's not just a 60-day process. There's been a lot going on since the legislature adjourned last year, even though they did go into 2 special sessions. So what kind of stuff happens between the legislative gatherings that bring you all to the table for those kinds of conversations?
I'd like to interject one thing, because basic ed is different today than it was 2 years ago. And so it's evolving, and the funding formulas for basic ed need to evolve with that. With TPEP, Common Core, basic ed, it looks different today than it did 2 years ago. So if we base our funding on the way it was 2 years ago, it's inadequate. That's another concern that I have, is that as basic ed evolves, so does the funding. The funding for basic ed needs to evolve as well. And in this process, it seems like instead of what we hear is that, okay, we'll give you more funds, but the accountability goes up. Well, along with accountability goes changes in basic education and the expectations. So we got to keep that in alignment and think about that as well.
You may get more money, but you may not see benefit on the backside because you have more expense that goes along
Yes,
with,
exactly.
with receiving it.
Yes.
It's kind of a vicious cycle.
Yes. And I think one is Deborah, as we talked about here, that one is our own internal studies done for last 6, 7, 8, 10 years. What is the right thing to do for funding? And there's a lot of data. But then as I introduced this national sort of comparison, because we are comparing ourselves nationally and internationally. For example, when I said we are number 9th from their list, which is just Education Week recently came out, Massachusetts is number 1. So when I really look at their per pupil spending, that's like $13,127 per student And you know where we are? We are 9,262. Now these are the two states which are almost very similar in size. And then I think about, do they have any larger worldwide companies than Washington?
In terms of population.
Probably not. So there is something they are doing in their taxation and structure of their whole tax codes that they are funding the education at the right level. And even if we are not at the right level, 2,000 more per student for our state will be $2 billion at least. So I think we need to really face where we compare nationally in performance, but also in funding. At the same time, our internal studies, which have been done over and over and over again, now it's time to really do something.
Move forward with
Yes.
That's a nice segue to our next conversation, which is about bonds and levies that are coming up. So we'll come to you last on this one, Andy, because we know Yelm community doesn't have anything on the ballot, but Olympia, North Thurston, and Tumwater all have something on the ballot coming up in February. Dick, why don't you tell us about what is happening for Olympia schools and what the voters are going to be taking a look at in February?
You bet. We have a technology and safety levy before our voters for $13.2 million. And in all taxes, I think, for our citizens are something that they're concerned with. I think that's one of the challenges, frankly, that the legislature faces too when they're trying to figure out how to fund the components of the McCleary decision. So even though that 13.2 seems relatively small, we recognize for our taxpayers that that can be a challenge from time to time. And so our levy is relatively small. It's focused on technology and safety. And what we've done a little differently than in the past, we haven't just built this internally. We invited private tech company leaders in. We invited people from across the state in. We had our technology department audited by outside sources from out of state to talk about what is it we really need to do. And I think we've come up with a modest and very fair proposal for our voters that really focuses on a few key components. One is technology is viewed as almost on equal footing with reading and writing and mathematics. We know from talking to employers, we know from talking to universities, that more and more of our students are expected to be able to do learning online. Doesn't mean they have to be familiar with an Apple platform or a PC platform or a certain kind of software, but what they do need to be able to do is navigate it and apply it in the world of work or in universities. We know that right now there's an equity issue. We have close to 30% free and reduced lunch. Not all students have access to technology at home, and that's an issue because they're going to be expected to go out in the world and be able to use those skills, and so we need to provide some opportunity for them. So that's key for us. Secondly, we learned in our audit that we need to support our teachers more fully in how to teach students to use technology. If we wander around with an iPhone, we download applications. Some of us have access to computers at home, and we use them for a variety of ways. But we want to make sure that our teachers are using the technology that we have in the most productive way. So for us, we're going to have a greater focus on supporting our teachers' learning so they can teach students better in the area of technology. Finally, I would add that safety is an issue for all school districts. And, you know, we've talked about this before, and I'm not sure it's getting any better in our public school settings where people choose to...
incidents just recently. About,
And, you know, I was addressing Olympia Rotary last week, and I would say that might be fundamentally the single biggest change that I've seen in my role as a school person is that safety and protection from outside influences has really risen to the top. And so within our levy, we have a focus on safety. We want our teachers in classrooms to immediately be able to access the office for assistance if they need it. We'll install cameras in the majority of our buildings. We're working to put cameras on our buses, and it's really geared towards safety. It keeps our citizens' tax rates relatively flat, and so we're pleased with what we put before our voters, and we look forward to being successful.
Is this a new levy or a renewing?
It replaces an existing
levy.
tech/capital levy, but it's fewer dollars involved in the total levy. Last one was closer to 16 million.
Okay, great. Raj?
Well, we have a $175 million bond proposition in front of the voters. Last time we had our bond passed was 2006. At that time, it was 112 million or so. At that time, it was the plan was to go again after 4 years. We have been growing quite a bit over the years, and so because of the economy, the board and the community working with the community decided we'll delay. So it's 4 years later than when it was supposed to be. So since that time, we have grown about 1,500 students. So other than the wear and tear and this growth, so we are asking for 175 million, and what it would include is some of the things which Dick said are the security, the safety for every school, and all the infrastructure, technologies, backbone of technology, which we are way behind. We need to do a lot of that work. But there will be major upgrades in 5 schools. We did last time a similar sort of work and created upgrades and a new school, Chambers Prairie. This time there will be a new middle school, 6 to 8. We are transitioning to 6 and 8. So that's the sort of scope of the work. But then again, the idea is that we will not be going after every 4 years. The plan is that we will do every 8 years, these kind of bonds. And so to really sustain the sport for the growth, we have grown 1,500 in the last 7-8 years. It will be the same, probably, in the next 7-8 years. So it's a reasonable amount, and the rate would be approximately combined rate after we issue the bonds, 574. And we are kind of lower level right now in the whole region, 515, and it will go up 59 cents per thousand assessed value of homes. So we have survived in the last few years with all the wonderful work our staff and the previous bond. We saved some money, and so all the projects were done on time, within budget, actually under budget. So we saved that money and really sustained the sport for our students for the last few years. So that's the overall scope, but technology and safety and all of the upgrades like roofs and leaking roofs and other areas of work. So that's our overall proposal.
Right. And Mike, what about Tumwater?
We last passed a bond in Tumwater in 2003. At that time, the Facilities Committee had planned for another bond in 2009. So we're 5 full years past that, and almost double the cycle that we would be looking at. We are addressing all 10 of our comprehensive schools, our 6 elementaries, 2 middle, and 2 high schools in this bond. 7 of the 10 buildings are being impacted in a major way. 2 of our elementaries are 1957 vintage, Peter G. Schmidt and Little Rock Elementary. The primary buildings there will be replaced on both sides, so they'll get new facilities. East Olympia and Tumwater Hill are our newest buildings, but they're 23 and 24 years old, so they're due for the 20-plus year renovation, and so they'll get that. Our middle schools are each going to get a new classroom wing for 6th grade as we're transitioning 6th grade from elementary to middle school. We feel like we had a committee working on that for over a year, and we feel like that's the best placement for them developmentally. What it does for us, though, it creates space in our elementary schools, because with the new basic ed law, by 2018, all of our kindergarten students should be full day, and our class size at K3 is supposed to go down to 17 students per teacher. So that's going to create a space need, even if we weren't growing in our population. And by moving the 6th grade to middle, a secondary impact is increasing space in our elementaries.
Empties a room or two. Yeah.
And then Tumwater High School is getting about $9 million worth of renovations as well. Black Hills less or so. And then Black Lake Elementary and Michael T. Simmons were both majorly impacted in 2005, but they are going to get some safety impacts and some new technology as well. Another big piece of this bond is $10 million set aside for technology expansion and enhancement. And we're falling a little bit behind there, and we really do need those funds. An example, Dick covered the technology piece, I think, for all of us really well, but we piloted the Smarter Balance Assessment, which is going to be the assessment used on the new Common Core state standards at Little Rock Elementary. And what we found with our students was that those students that had good tech skills, they could focus on the math problems and the language arts problems. But those kids that didn't have the same level of technology skills, they struggled with the technology. So the technology really negatively impacted their ability to demonstrate their performance on math and language arts. So we need to enhance that at a younger age for all of our kids, so that, because with Smarter Balance, the test is on the computer.
Online test.
So that's another reason that we need to enhance this, as well as just general use for our students and our staff.
Yeah, I think people don't often think that sometimes it's not what the child has been taught, but the tool they have to use to actually take the test can have a really distinct impact on their success on that test. So,
And it does goes back to that equity issue and opportunity for students. If I'm a student that doesn't have access to technology at home, and I'm being assessed yearly on subject areas, but part of my ability to be successful on that assessment is my ability to use technology. Students who have technology at home have a huge advantage. And so as a school district, we need to put all kids in a position to be successful.
yeah. And we know very well here how hard it is to stay, to keep pace with the technology. I mean, you can never quite get out in front of it.
Right.
And sometimes it moves so quickly, it's very, very difficult to, stay up to speed with it.
A couple of other points, Deborah. One is, just for our viewers, our levies need only 50%. Bonds need 60%. And so it takes quite a bit effort, for all school systems. So that's one area I want to emphasize. The second is economy has been sort of on the down area there, and the rates are very good. And so the investment in this whole region, if you add the total amount of these bonds, and in our case, state we are estimating will add $50 million. They use a formula to calculate how much they add. So in our case, it would be $225 million investment in our community, local community with jobs and economy. That will help. But at the same time, we'll do the right thing for the long term. So 60% is one hurdle, and each of our school systems have their own little different demographics and personality. And some challenges in our case are different than Tumwater, Olympia, or Yelm, mobility of military families. And so this is what we really talk about all the time, that we need awareness and understanding by all people in the community that it takes it's a different threshold.
If I could
Sure, jump in.
wrap up. Our bond is actually for $136 million. That's a lot of money, no matter how you cut it. The good news is we have this plan so that we're going to purchase and resell the bonds in such a manner that our tax rate will stay exactly where it was in 2013. The tax rate for our current bonds and levy was $5.94 per thousand in 2013. The plan would be to keep that right at $5.94 over the next 8 years, and at that time we actually want to build capacity so we can run another bond about 8 years out, because we assume in 8 years we'll need to build at least another elementary, maybe 2. So our goal is to not spike the tax rate today, and in 8 years when we run another initiative, to not spike it then. Right. We want to have this leveled in the future so that our taxpayers that aren't associated directly with schools won't see a tax rate increase.
But growth is a huge issue, and it can, it's a cloudy crystal ball at best.
Yes, yes,
So So you will be building capacity to try to provide resources for the growth that you anticipate
Correct.
in your community. What has your growth rate been like for the term of the last bond?
Our growth is, our student population has been basically flat for the last, this year is actually going to be our highest enrollment ever. But over the last 10 years, it's been pretty flat. It's fluctuated within about 100 student FTE during that time.
So in our case, it has been 8% from last time when we passed the bond. So statewide, I think the growth has been less than 2%. Student population, we have grown 8%. And people a lot of times say it's the military. Military is a factor, but we have looked at that. It's not just the military. It's just the area where the people can buy homes, and there's more growth, more property.
Well, there's growth on the east side of the county.
Right. So,
yeah.
so it's, and as Mike said, the rates, I think we are going to be in the similar area. For example, Olympia and Tumwater have been a little higher. Now Olympia will go down. You know, it depends when you sell the bonds, but ours will be 574 after we sell these bonds, but regionally we'll be in the same kind of range overall tax rate for our people.
Student growth in Olympia?
Student growth is up the past 2 years, about 2%. Olympia's enrollment had declined a bit, and we're seeing growth on the east side of our district and certainly on the west side where we're getting concerned about space. But in the last 2 years, about 2%, and we're really happy to see that.
Which brings us to you, because the conversation we had earlier, you don't have a bond or a levy on the ballot, but you have needs.
Similar challenges. You know, obviously when the economy went, every school kind of found what they had to do to cut us far away from the classroom. So technology is a need for us in our district, as all of them. And as education moves that way and we provide those services for kids, that's a great need for us. Our growth is similar to North Thurston in the fact that we've grown by about almost 900 students now since about 2005. And so our bond was in 2003, the last time we built. So we are at capacity in most of our buildings and over capacity and all. We are in the beginning process of looking at, study and survey, looking to see what we can do with boundary changes, maybe having to allocate our resources. The infrastructure in Yelm is much different than the folks in here in this area of Thurston County, in that we are one house in a subdivision or on 5 acres. We don't have that big business piece, so it's really a hardship for homeowners at that point in time. However, our homeowners tell us that they like our schools and they want them to be modern and up to date and those things. So we're looking at that. We're experiencing large growth. We're continuing to have to buy buses all the time now because we're putting on we have 60 kids at one stop just the other day as I drove by, and because this development has just gone,
Right.
And so we have an apartment complex, which doesn't sound like much to these folks, but when you put 400 new units in one area of one of our schools that is already at 600 capacity, that's growth that they're used to. For us in Yelm, that's a new piece. So we look at those things. We're in that planning process and are feeling this similar situation, but have been able to kind of manage it, but won't be able to for long with the continued
So
piece.
you're in the second year of an 8-year bond?
Basically, no. We ran ours in 03, so we're
in 03, I'm sorry.
so we're well into it. But again, we're very we really look at what our tax rates are out there because it is different. We just don't have that business infrastructure to help us.
It's a part of the county, the East County, and we talk North Thurston and Yelm, obviously, is the faster growing area. So I can see where that could have an impact, but if you don't have the business base to draw from, also.
Right. In the city of Yelm, I think we just heard the other day there's 800 building lots that are available to be built on that we're ready to go till the economy turned. And so that basically they're being built on now. I mean, our mitigation and those impact fees are starting to really roll in. And so we know that we're not long, that we'll be in this similar conversation. And then just the other thing too that I'm just an outside person looking in at these 3 districts. These are well-planned bonds and levies that these folks are running. These are not trying to be Cadillac. They're not trying to get out there. They are taking care of the necessities that are coming and actually have taken into great account what the legislature is putting forward as far as classroom space and those things coming down. There's no crystal ball, but I think that these 3 districts have done an amazing job of looking down the road into what they can do. And to be honest with you, we're benefiting from their practice. So we appreciate what they're doing and the caretakers of that. So.
Thank you. And Deborah, one other thing I want to say, which I think Andy touched. we as this region school systems, we work together very well. The collaboration has been amazing. And number one, the education of our kids in the whole region, doesn't matter which school systems they go to, is really, really good, far superior than some of the other areas. So that is one thing. And the second is, I believe this collective effort of working together has provided us, which we are amazed and pleasantly surprised. All business groups are really behind these efforts, and all of the other organizations. So we are getting great nod from a lot of folks who understand that this is the right thing to do for our students.
Before we get off of the discussion about bonds, though, something that I would like for each of you to take just a second to speak to is the citizens groups that have been working
Yes.
to advocate for the
Yes.
bond. I realize that you
Yes.
individually can't sit here and advocate
Yes.
one way or the other, but there are citizen
Yes.
advisory groups and that have been very, very active. And one of the things that I have found very interesting is the common message. When you see the vote yes for schools, you
Yes.
see it in Tumwater, you see the same sign in Olympia, you see
Yes.
it's a very
Yes.
coordinated effort. So would any of you want to speak to the groups that are
Yeah,
helping to do this?
I would say that the people, not only three, when Yelm ran levy last time, all 4 school systems, the people who are out there working, volunteers, they came together. They regularly met, and they came up with those ideas. And that has been very well received by every group in our region, because it's that collaboration, it's working together. We have similar issues. So it has been really inspiring to watch some of these community leaders coming together and doing this right thing for our community.
And it's bigger than us, than these 4 districts, because from Rochester, all the way across, Rainier, Tenino, Griffin, I mean, all those districts that really make up Greater Thurston County schools, that support of that parent piece, because they ultimately understand that we're in this together. And so that's been a really neat piece to follow.
Yeah.
And it has been impactful. I think it's a great process. And again, students are benefiting from that effort. And that's the key. That's our business. So.
The citizens group in Tumwater this year, I'm fairly new to, this is my 4th year in the district, and 2 years ago when we ran the levy, a small group that worked very intensely on that and collaborated with the other school districts, just did yeoman's work. This year we've actually have a larger citizens group that are doing that same effort and that work, and it's really nice to see the blend of new people come together with those that have traditionally done that work. We're pretty excited about the fact that that's happened for us. So,
I know one other thing I want to add is, Victor, before I forget, it was last time when we did the levy. Some of us were on 2 years levy. Mm-hmm. This was the group from outside and our boards coming together that will be on the same cycle, 4 years levy. And now bonds, of course, will be different, but at least we are looking at 8 years.
The levies are all synced.
If I can add one more piece, I kind of waxing philosophical today. I talked a little bit about the 3 branches of government. But I would say that the thing that I appreciate is what does it mean to be a citizen? Mm-hmm. And these people who volunteer for our committees are informed, they're passionate about their support of public education, and they're really modeling what it means to be a citizen. And from my perspective, whether you support our efforts, which we hope people do, or you don't support, that you look at these people as models of citizenship, and your obligation as a citizen is to understand what these initiatives are about prior to voting. And so my hat's off to, obviously, I appreciate the support we receive from our citizen committees, but in a broader view, that sense of citizenship and what does it mean to participate in a democracy is just incredibly important. So I'm very grateful to them.
Well, let's move on to some other things. Governor Inslee has declared January School Board Recognition Month. We're almost at the end of January right now, but a lot of folks may not really understand the role of the school board. It's an elected position. So what does the school board do? What's their responsibility and role in our schools? And why should somebody consider potentially running for a position on the school board? Let's start with you, Raj.
Well, our school systems are structured in a way that funding, as we talked about earlier, is decided at the state level and local level for the levies and some federal money. But when it comes to policies, policy level work at each community has, as I said earlier, a different kind of complexity and issues. So these are the people board members are the ones who are the policymakers, and those decisions they make, they cover pretty much every aspect of our school system. So my role there is more of a CEO and day-to-day running the system, but when it comes to major policy issues, they are the ones who really approve that. And secondly, I would say they are pretty much volunteer positions, and the people who want to be part of that kind of work, they are genuinely interested in helping our education system. I have seen from my experience, and I would say that without their help, because they are the community leaders, they are out there in the community all the time, they have a pulse of the community, they bring that kind of down-to-earth, average person's view to the school system. And sometimes they challenge us in a good way, that come on, this needs to change, or this needs to get better. And we gain from that. At the same time, it's not their job to run our school system, but they basically keep the big picture policy work and the direction of the system. For example, our strategic plans and the goals, what I establish goals with them every year, they are grounded in their day-to-day understanding of the community out there and the needs of our community.
How many people on your school?
Five board
Five
members.
on all your board?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I think in general there are 5. There's only one school system, Seattle, which is 7. So it's
It's a
5.
slightly bigger school
Bigger
district.
school
yeah,
system,
yeah.
yes.
Slightly bigger issues to deal with, maybe.
Yes.
Anybody else want to jump in on school boards, their roles?
Just,
Why should somebody run?
yeah, they do direct the mission and vision of the district. I mean, honestly, they help to put that place in there. And I'm very fortunate in Yelm that we have a great board. And I'll tell you why people should run it. It goes right back to what Dick just talked about, citizenship, and that piece of giving back to community. We're fortunate to see that out there. And I really think one thing that we see in this area is great boards, because one, they're willing to collaborate, they're going to communicate, and they really are responsible to the public. And so they're in that world that makes them really a positive infrastructure for us to do that. I think that someone should get involved in our education process. One of the things that we see right now, and I think it's kind of a sad commentary at times, because it is not a paid position, but it is many, many hours. These folks work hard, but the joys that they get back, are many. So very fortunate to do that. The other thing that I'll say about board members that, and honestly, I probably didn't have a great thing about that, is that they do hire and evaluate the superintendent. So that's a good piece to know. So I just want to throw that out there.
You have to be nice to them.
Yeah. So, I say that tongue in cheek, but I very much do value it. In Yelm, we've had a very stable board. One of our members has been on the board for 29 years, for example. And so for the wisdom that comes with experience is great. And now we have a new member who brings fresh eyes. It's just in there for their first year. And so that blending of that piece and from all walks of life is very important for that.
Yeah.
So.
We carry, candidate forums a lot on our channels, and many years back, I cannot remember who it was, but it was a gentleman who won his seat on, I think it was on the North Thurston School Board, and I saw him at a social function, and I asked him how it was going, and he'd never been in elective politics or had never been in an elected position before, and he said, I had no idea how much impact the people who sat on the board have on the future of our community, because the decisions we make affect the children under the care of the system, and that can have such a profound impact on the health and well-being of our community as it grows.
That positive focus is really, and really I think that to be involved in the board, you have to have, I'm going to go back to a heart for kids and student achievement, and we are trying to do what's best for them and their future, and ultimately our own future. So.
There is one other piece that I think is important that research is telling us. We recently met with Dawn Sloma from Thurston County Public Health. And research is now showing that students who attain a higher level education will access the healthcare system less frequently, will live longer lives. So when I think about that and I think about school boards, it's not just about sort of education within the sense that we've been talking about.
It's not just bonds and levies.
It's bigger. And so fundamentally, is there a more important local elected position than a school board member is a question that I would have.
You wanted to jump in, Mike?
Yeah, I think that there's two other pieces to boards that are effective, and we have a very effective board in Tumwater. But one real important piece, especially in today's world, is promote student learning. And the board needs to take a strong position in that, and ours does. The other thing that I think our board does well, and I think the boards in Thurston County do, is engage the community. I think it's really essential that the boards do that. And they actually communicate with each other, and they communicate with our community really well. And finally, for those folks that are thinking about becoming school board members, I think it's the one piece that's most important is that you come in and you have with the idea that you're going to serve the needs of all students, all of our students, and how do we best do that?
Okay. Well, let's move on to, my voice is failing quickly, it sounds like. Let's talk a little bit about Common Core standards, and we're going to come back to talk about classified employees before the end of the show, because I know we don't want to leave them out. But let's talk about the Common Core standards. It's kind of floated up in the conversation so far a little bit, but it's another fairly significant major initiative in our schools, and our students will now be taking a new assessment as a part of that. So let's have that discussion, because it seems like that whole assessment piece and what students are being asked to be competent in, and it seems to be a moving target to some of us from the outside looking in. It seems to be constantly evolving and changing. So where are we with this?
Well, it's actually a phase-in for us, and I think the other districts will speak to this too. But this year, in our elementaries, we're phasing in our language arts, but the high school's all in. At the elementary, math is all in this year, but we're phasing it in at the secondary level. Next year, we will reverse that, and there's no way you're going to get there in 2 years anyway. But our theory is that we're going to phase this in over 2 years. The first actual assessments we have to take are the Smarter Balance assessments in the spring of 2015. This year we're still taking the MSP, which is the elementary middle school assessment, and the high school assessments for end of course, and so on. So we're still focused on the ELERs and the state standards, but we're making the transition to the Common Core standards. And the alignment between the different content area standards, I believe that the last I heard was that our state standards in math are about 60% aligned with the Common Core. Our English language arts standards are about 80% aligned. So we are in flux and in transition for that. One of our elementaries actually is going to take the Smarter Balance assessment as a pilot this year. Our others are transitioning into that for next year. So it's an interesting time. The one other piece I'd like to add is that if you're trying to use data to improve your overall programs, and you're in constant transition with your assessments, and the assessments aren't necessarily aligned, that's a difficulty.
It's kind of hard to get the data.
So we're reliant on our local assessments to really improve instruction at this point, not on the state or
And this has to all be implemented by spring of 2015.
Correct.
So we
Yes.
have a year to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just add, Mike has already covered that. I think from a big picture standpoint, long term it's good. 45 some states have come together to have these common in mathematics.
Can you just what they are? What is Common Core?
It's basically standards in mathematics, common standards, similar sort of level of expectation and rigor, and language arts.
Math
so
and
these are
language
math and
arts.
science. So those are the two areas. And for us as a system, well, number one, the idea there is to go deeper into various areas of mathematics, for example, and concepts and understanding level. So rigor would be a little higher. But secondly, from our perspective, it's common sense, kind of regular, practical, real world experiences kind of work. And the other thing comes to my mind is that for our kind of school system where mobility of students due to military or otherwise coming from other states, I think it would help because we'll be coming up the same sort of standards and expectations. Now rigor will be higher, and it's changing, and the test will be done online, as has been said before, and that's why we have need for better technology and the backbone of technology and all of that, because it'll be all online and the expectations are different. So it's going to be a little adjustment period, and there is a thought there that the performance overall might go down as a state
So we'll
and as
see
a
a
school
little dip
system, because
in the
everything will be different and new expectations. But we are working, as Mike said, we are all kind of working towards that. And this is where I also want to say that when state is saying, or people are saying, oh, don't fund the school system, they need to be reforming themselves. So to me, these are the major reforms which, without any influx of money, we have been working on, and we'll do the right thing for our kids.
Raj and Mike have covered most of it. I would just like to add a couple other pieces. We've been doing quite a bit of training over the past 2 years in both mathematics and English and language arts. And but I want to focus a little bit more. I want people to understand there's a lot of conversation still out there in the public that this is a federal mandate. This is not a federally driven process. These are driven by states, state governors. It has broad support across the country, from everything from the Business Roundtable to the PTA. And I think that's really important. 45 states, 4 territories, Department of Defense schools have all signed on. And we think this is a really good thing. Ahead are science, world language, and even arts. And I really appreciate the fact that I'll be able to look at the assessments of students in our schools, and I'm going to be able to draw some comparisons, not just locally, but regionally and nationally, to other schools that are using the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and really talk about where's this success coming, how can we improve, because that's where we want to be. This is about improving what we do. These are internationally benchmarked standards. They've looked broader than the United States. They're deeper, and I relish the opportunity. I heard you say the term dip. I keep telling people in the Olympia School District, no dips. We may see that, but I think what you'll see is that Thurston County schools will perform well, kind of within the same parameters that they perform well on MSP and other assessments. So.
Okay, great. Andy, how are you guys doing?
The other piece that I think it's all great. I think that people need to understand, though, it is a change in practice for teachers. And as you go forward in the Common Core and the rigor and getting much deeper and an application base, when I was a student, there was a lot of sit and get. We listened to someone, and now the engagement process, making sure that's a meaningful piece that's happening in the classroom. And so there is a lot of training that has to go on. There is a lot of work that's being done by our educators. And again, I'll just go through the piece that we are asking, as Mike kind of pointed out there, that we're asking them to work in this world and get ready for another world at the same time. And it's daunting, but the one thing I'm just going to appreciate, I think regionally, our educators have accepted it. I think that they are moving forward, and I think that there's a strong passion to do what's right in this world. And so I think that everyone sees the value. But challenges ahead, obviously, with this, but again, a great piece that's coming down for us.
Well, the whole assessment piece has always been kind of a perennial topic here, and it just the name keeps changing and the standards keep changing, so there's always something to talk about. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I do want to talk a little bit about kind of the unsung heroes in our school districts, and those are the classified employees, and Classified Employee Week is coming up. So I know you have a particular interest in this, Raj, so tell us about,
Well, thank you
those
for
folks.
really asking this question, because we all believe, I know, that we talk about teachers and principals, and sports staff in the classroom, but people who really make the whole system work efficiently, effectively every day are the classified employees. So I'll start by saying, when I think about classified employees, they really feed our kids, they drive our kids, they keep them safe, they support them every day in every aspect. Now, from our system standpoint, for example, buses, they transport 9,000 students every day, and 8,000 miles they cover every day, back and forth. So that's the bus drivers, and at the same time, I've talked about here positive behavior support system for students. They are trained and they work with the kids right the time they enter the bus, and welcome them in a way that the behavior of our school system, which, by the way, I'm so proud of that. It has continually going down with discipline issues for our system. So they are part of the
improving. Discipline is
discipline
going down.
issues are going. Behavior is improving. Discipline is going down.
Discipline is going down.
Discipline
issues are going down.
Absolutely. And so that, and then I hadn't realized until I got from my team there that we are the largest food service operation in the county, with 2,100 breakfasts on a regular basis served and 7,400 lunches every day. So this is quite an operation, making sure that every kid gets the food and all of that. So I want to say thank you to all of them for what they do every day. And then the paraeducators and the maintenance and grounds, that's another major area. With the kind of wear and tear we have had, the average elementary school in our system is 600 plus, 700 some of them, and almost approaching 800. Now, so to that wear and tear and still feeding them, in these classrooms or somewhere, it takes a lot of work, and they have maintained them very well, and so it's welcoming and all of that. So classified employees in general, I think they are the backbone of the whole system, and we don't talk about them much. So I want to say thank you for.
Do you have any
work.
special activities coming up for Classified Employees Week?
Well, we honor them, every year, at our board meeting, and we'll do some of that, and we go out to the classrooms and schools and see them.
Great.
So this is our way of saying thank you.
Dick, what are you doing for that?
Raj, I covered it pretty fully. The only piece I would add is last week at this time I had a delegation from our sister city, Kyoto, Japan, and we spent the day in the schools, and they were almost to a person most impressed by the activities they saw classified staff leading. I'm talking loading of school buses, talking about feeding tubes, and they really get the sense that public education really means everyone in our country. And we could not serve every student in our community who wants to be in the public schools without classified staff. They couldn't get to school, we couldn't care for them, the paraprofessional support. So they just, as Raj says, an engine. We honor them regularly. I send out a weekly newsletter to all of our staff, always including our classified staff as full partners in the work that we do.
Andy?
Yeah, they're woven into the fabric of schools. I mean, obviously, what they do is so important to us and for our students. What I'm most impressed with the passion and what they do in their work every day, but also how they've been impacted by the initiatives that are coming down the thing. They are very educated. Our maintenance guys, they know the assessment calendar, which, you know what, that makes, they're not out with a leaf blower out beside school. They work and they do that. The other thing that is you walk through our buildings and how they interact with students and the positive things. And in an elementary, a guy with a ladder and some tools is a big deal, and the moments that they take with those kids just to talk and interact and provide that positive leadership and role model out there is amazing. And we too are very proud of our food service and our parapros and bus drivers, and we have the same. Our bus drivers often they're not in cell phone range because of our geographic area, so it's radio piece. And we had a medical emergency that happened just yesterday, and our bus driver, in that case, acted with the highest degree of care for that child, and it was amazing. So hats off to them, and I can't say enough positive things.
Thanks. And you, Mike?
Just to add, and this is probably common across the districts, but right now we have fewer custodial and grounds and clerical staff than we had 6 years ago. because of the cuts that we had to make. So we're doing more with less. Those folks are doing more with less still today than they have been. The facilities and the grounds and our operations in Tumwater are outstanding because these people have just rolled up their sleeves and they're getting it done. I'd like to mention, like our mechanics, our bus mechanics, every time, twice a year, whether it's a surprise visit or a planned visit, they get superior ratings on how well and how safe our buses are, every time. Our food service folks do a great job, and without our paraeducators, we could not run the educational programs that we provide our kids today. So they are totally essential to the operation of our district.
Well, thank you all for that. And we've kind of come to the end of the show. I would like to say that of all the things that I remember from my early years in education, I remember Mr. Spung a lot, and he was our custodian at Pioneer Elementary School. And you're right, absolutely woven into the fabric. He was always available if a kid needed something. He often put the Band-Aid on the boo-boo when you fell on the playground. So those classified employees are very important, and we are thankful to have them in our schools. Well, gentlemen, thank you again for joining me at the Roundtable. Thank you. Good luck with your bonds and levies and with what you're doing out there. Cheering from the sidelines. So we greatly appreciate it.
Yes.
If you're the parent of a preschool children, remember, let's try this again. If you're the parent of a preschool child, read with your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to get them ready for their education. And you might throw in some number games to get them interested in math. If you're the parent of a school-age child, get involved with your child's school. There are numerous volunteer opportunities for you. If you go to your school's website, you'll see a link on most of them for volunteer opportunities, or talk to the school principal. Find out more about the bond and levy, or bonds or levy that may be in your school district. You can get information on websites from the citizens groups, and if you can't find those, I'm sure somebody at the district could direct you. And remember, whatever you decide, we do encourage you to vote. It's important. Bonds require a 60% yes vote to pass, levies a 50%. So every vote is critical. So please remember to put your ballot back in the mail. I got mine yesterday, so I know they're already in mailboxes. So for all of us here at the Superintendent's Roundtable, I'm Deborah Vinsel. We'll see you again in May.